Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Rabbi Shmuley podcast. I want to make sure I'm all set up here. So, I hope you're all watching, and I want to make sure that you can hear me. So, okay, special edition of the Rabbi Shmuley podcast. It's a Monday night, and like I said, I want to make sure you can all hear me. So, I'm kind of in shock. We should be talking about the coronavirus giving people hope. People are struggling for their lives every day amidst many hopeful stories, and I never want to lose sight of that. But every day, the suffering continues, the death toll continues, the infection rate rises. So, who would have thought that on a day like today, I wake up and I see that the Guardian of all publications, which many people consider to be arguably the most anti-Israel publication in the English language in the world, you'd think that they would hold their fire on anti-Semitism and attacking Jewish figures with vile, disgusting anti-Semitic attacks. You'd think that they would hold their fire at the time of this great international emergency. Never in my lifetime has the world suffered as much as it is now. And the Jewish community in New Rochelle was decimated. The Jewish community in Crown Heights, these are all suburbs of New York, being decimated, people dying every single day. State of Israel fighting for its life against the spread of coronavirus, and thank God doing an effective job. I could go through all the Jewish community suffering, and not that Jewish suffering is any more relevant, of course, to anyone else's suffering. New York City and New York State has been the hardest hit, and it has very large Jewish populations. But I'm focusing on Jewish suffering in particular because you would think that the Guardian would have this much sympathy for a world which is in mourning, for a world which is in a deep state of shock, for a world that can hardly process the amount of gloom and misery and deaths that are being foisted upon it by a global pandemic on every single day. And yet I wake up today and I see that this guy who I don't know, Charles Bramesco, I don't think I know him, I've never heard of him, and I'm reluctant to even give him a platform because, who the heck is he? I see he has about 11,000 followers on Twitter, so when I tweet about him, I'm giving him an audience which is like 20 times the size. I would never want to give someone who spews anti-Semitism a platform. And by the way, I don't know if he's Jewish or not, and even if he is, it makes no difference because what he did was write something deeply anti-Semitic. But I would never want to give a hater like him a platform. I would never want to give a hater like him really any mention. People like him should be ignored. The people we should be focusing on right now are the first responders, the caregivers, the doctors, the nurses, the patients, the families, everyone who's suffering, because the suffering is unspeakable. And yet in the midst of that, look, all of us need, a break. We all need a respite from the constant gloom. And HBO and Netflix and Amazon Prime can provide that, and much more importantly, religion, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, faith, hope can provide it even more. But we need a break. So HBO is now airing an adaptation of Philip Roth's The Plot Against America. Philip Roth grew up in Newark, New Jersey, not far from here. I remember me and Cory Booker used to speak about the fact Cory was so proud of the fact that Philip Roth had been a resident of the city where he was the mayor. So he wrote The Plot Against America. I have only watched 2 episodes of it on HBO. There's a 3rd episode that's out tonight, I believe. I haven't seen it yet. I think it's extremely well done, and it's about the dangers of fascism in any country, and it focuses on a revisionist history where Charles Lindbergh, who was an out-and-out anti-Semite, and I saw Lindbergh's grave in Hawaii. I'm trying to remember which island. I think it's Maui. But we went to his grave, and I was like disgusted knowing that he was a fan of the Nazis, a Nazi sympathizer. But the plot of the book is that Lindbergh wins the 1940 presidential election, displacing or replacing Franklin Roosevelt, and then America becomes like a fascist country. I don't know the rest of it because I have not read the book. I know the general plot of the plot. And I also, I have not yet seen tonight's the 3rd installment of the miniseries. But here you have this guy, Charles Bramesco, and I'm sorry to have to give this guy any ink whatsoever. Charles Bramesco, writing in The Guardian, and he essentially says that the series is about Donald Trump and the rise of fascism. he all but says that Trump, he kind of implies, he makes the comparisons, Trump is Hitler and all that other stuff. And then suddenly I appear. Out of the blue, yours truly, I appear in one of the most libelous things I have ever seen, because the book by Philip Roth has a Southern rabbi who somehow makes it to Northern Newark. I don't know how. And his name is Rabbi Lionel Bengelsdorf, I think, if anyone can help me here. Is it Rabbi Bengelsdorf? And he's he's helping the rise of fascism, because he is serving as a fig leaf. He's serving as a fig leaf for Lindbergh. This guy from The Guardian, let's get his name again, Charles Bramesco, actually compares me, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, to this Rabbi Lionel Bengelsdorf, and this is what he writes. Let me find it. And I'm sorry to have to give this story any credence at all, but you see, this kind of anti-Semitic attack against the rabbi or against any Jewish personality that trivializes the Holocaust, trivializes what Hitler represented, the Nazis represented, what Lindbergh, in trying to keep America from fighting Hitler, represented, the trivialization of the murder of 6 million Jews, and the attack on me as aiding and abetting the rise of fascism and neo-Nazism. This is so vile, so repugnant, so disgusting, so offensive, so stomach-turning, so utterly nauseating that it demands a response. So he says that Rabbi Lionel Bengelsdorf, quote, plays a searing comment on the likes of Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, a worldwide shanda, cozying up to President Trump in the presumptive belief that he'll be exempt from the hatred now being seeded. He, I guess he still means me, represents a sizable Jewish component in Trump's base. Hardline conservatives convinced that he'll have their back. So let me get this straight. The Guardian, a respected publication, albeit one of the most anti-Israel in the world, allows this Charles Bramesco, whoever the heck he is, he says he lives in, his Twitter feed says he lives in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Seriously, where Chabad is? And he says that I am Rabbi Lionel Bengelsdorf. So first, let me be clear. All of you know me. I'm not an unknown quantity. There's not a huge amount I hide from the public. I speak to you almost every night on Facebook Lives. I speak to you constantly through Twitter. I speak to you constantly through Instagram. I've written 32 books, even 33, I think, by now. Thank God. Baruch Hashem. I am aiding and abetting fascism? How repugnant and disgusting is that? Hey, Charles, let me speak directly to you. I have dedicated my life to Holocaust memory. I had the privilege of knowing Elie Wiesel and hosting him beginning at Oxford 30 years ago, lecturing about the 6 million who were slaughtered. It's amazing that I should have to even be put on the defensive by this vile writer. I'm the one, not this Charles Bramesco, who took his kids to some of the most painful places on earth, to Majdanek, and Sachsenhausen, and Mauthausen, and Auschwitz, and Birkenau, and Lublin, and Kozice, and Budapest, and I could go on, all the places where my people were slaughtered and murdered. I'm the one who launched a national media campaign to stop the genocidal rhetoric of Iran to annihilate the Jewish people. I'm the one who traveled to Rwanda multiple times to spread word of the Rwandan genocide and ensure that never again, for every nation means just that, never again, black or white, Jewish or non-Jewish, that genocide is the great scourge of our time. And once this disgusting, vile coronavirus passes, we'll have to get back to the number one issue on earth, which is stopping genocide, whether it's Sudan, whether it's Syria. I'm the one who took out full-page ads in publications like the Washington Post protesting the slaughter of my innocent Arab and Muslim brothers and sisters in Syria. And this disgusting Charles Bramesco, given a platform by The Guardian, accuses me of being a fig light for neo-Nazis. How dare you? Have you no decency, sir? Have you no decency? I speak to the editors of The Guardian. While the world is suffering and dying from coronavirus, this is the drivel that you decided to publish? While Jewish communities are decimated, while we read every day on Chabad websites of people who are dying in Crown Heights, rabbis who are dying, while the Jewish community, so many, Eli Bear, the hero of Hatzalah, fighting for his life in Florida. Another person who, and then someone else, my family called me today about another person fighting for their life in Florida. Or someone who called me, someone else here in New Jersey, a young man fighting for his life in Florida. And it's not just the Jewish community, of course, it's every community. But I'm speaking about the Jews in particular. While our community suffers and dies, The Guardian, this is the drivel you decided to publish? That we Jews are responsible for the rise of fascism in the United States? How disgusting is that? I don't care how much you hate Donald Trump. You have an issue with Trump, he's a big boy, he could probably defend himself. Take it up with him. But firstly, to compare Trump to Hitler is so stupid, so asinine. It so trivializes the murder and gassing of 1.5 million Jewish children. It so trivializes the murder of 6 million innocent victims to call Trump, who has Jewish grandchildren, a Jewish daughter, a Jewish son-in-law, and who in the state of Israel has like a 90% popularity, to compare him to Hitler is just revolting. It's disgusting. You want to hate Trump for a million other reasons? Hate him. Go ahead. Because this isn't about Trump, and I'm not going to let you make it about Trump. It's about The Guardian and its journalistic standards, which are now, as you see, close to zero, nil, nothing. The fact that I would be put on the defensive while I'm trying to keep my family safe. I'm a father of 9 children, thank God. I'm a grandfather of 6 grandchildren, thank God. I'm trying to keep my family safe. I'm trying to keep their spirits up. I'm trying to keep us focused on Torah and hope and trust and prayer and Torah study. And we have a little yeshiva that my son Mendy and my son-in-law Moshe set up in the room just over there. And I have to now deal with this. You know, when I saw websites that were putting up things about the rise of anti-Semitism during the coronavirus, and when I saw ADL and other organizations showing that, I don't know, for example, a Hasidic man, I think, went to a car dealership, they refused to treat him, saying that you Jews are spreading the virus, or of course there were people who were actually saying the Jews were spreading the virus. I didn't even focus a lot on it because I said to myself, the fight for anti-Semitism, unfortunately, is eternal, and we'll come back to it, but right now we have to fight coronavirus. We have to make sure that whoever needs these experimental drugs to save their lives because they're almost losing hope that they get them. We have to make sure that people need to be tested can be tested. We have to make sure that people keep social distancing, that people stay home, and that we don't reopen the economy too early and endanger lives. And so I said the fight against anti-Semitism and all that, it's secondary. It's very important, but it's secondary right now because the fight against the coronavirus is even more important. But then I get attacked by The Guardian as a rabbi who would aid and abet fascism. Have you no decency? Have you no decency while people are dying? While people are fighting for their lives? While people are crying? While people are mourning? This is what The Guardian publishes? This drivel? And if there weren't a state of international crisis and emergency, I would really think about legal action against The Guardian. And there will come a time, hopefully imminently, because that would mean that the crisis to the world has passed, when I will consider it. Because something like this cannot be overlooked. I want to be clear. I have spent my life fighting for human rights. I have spent my life fighting for the dignity of my African American brothers and sisters. I had an African American president of the L'chaim Society in Oxford back in 1993. He today is my own senator here in New Jersey. I have a gay brother and I fought for LGBT rights. Even as a religious Orthodox Jew, my entire life I have fought for that. I have fought for the lives of my Arab brothers and sisters, my Muslim brothers and sisters, especially in Syria, who are being gassed to death. You're talking about coronavirus and how it enters people's lungs and can slowly kill them? Well, mustard gas does it faster and sarin gas does it faster. And we've done almost nothing to protect our Muslim brothers and sisters in Syria. I am the one who was railed against about America being a haven for anyone for whom it should be a sanctuary, like it should have been for the Jews of the Holocaust when it was not. And then this repulsive, disgusting, utterly vile You guys should look him up. Charles Bramesco of The Guardian has the chutzpah, the effrontery, the sheer audacity, the nauseating, stomach-turning, utterly anti-Semitic. Because what he wrote is utterly anti-Semitic. Effrontery to write that I would ever aid and abet fascism. Are you out of your flippin' mind? I've spent my life fighting dictatorships. I've spent my life fighting authoritarian regimes. I've spent my life promoting democracy. I've spent my life promoting one man, one vote, and all the beauty and freedoms of the democratic world, and wishing and working to make sure that it's for everyone. What a disgusting, vile libel. And I could defame everyone at The Guardian and say, what do you expect? This is the most anti-Israel and anti-Israel is anti-Semitism publication in the world. I'm not going to do that because it would be unfair to the fair journalists at The Guardian, of which I'm sure there were many. It would be unfair maybe to the editors who didn't sufficiently focus on this. Maybe they didn't read it closely enough. Maybe they're too busy protecting their own families. Maybe they allowed this to slip through human error. And I can understand human error at a time where we're all concerned about keeping our parents alive, keeping ourselves alive, keeping our children alive. You all know that my father is very sick in the hospital right now. So many of you have prayed for him. And daily I fight to get my father, with my brothers and sisters, the best medical care, the best treatment, the best doctors, so that we can keep my father alive. And I have to deal with something like this. And maybe the people at The Guardian who allowed this to slip through, not the disgusting journalist Charles Bramesco who wrote it, but maybe the people at The Guardian, maybe they simply, through human error, allowed this to slip through. I understand, I sympathize. These are very grave times. But then do the right thing. Give Charles Bramesco the opportunity to apologize to me, and I will accept his apology. I'm a great believer in apologies, even for vile, disgusting, willful acts. And this was willful. It is absolutely libelous. And I would still forgive him if he apologized over the next 24 hours. Or fire him if he won't. Because this kind of anti-Semitism, saying that Jews are responsible for the rise of anti-Semitism, the Jews are responsible, accusing Jews of being responsible for hatred against them, is the heart of anti-Semitism. It says that the victim is responsible. It says that we're the ones who are responsible. It's dastardly. It's lowly. It's beneath any serious publication. It's beneath any decent publication. And it's beneath even The Guardian. So either ask him to apologize and accept his apology within the next 24 hours, or fire him, because he brings the entire publication into disgrace. The idea that the Jews were responsible for the Holocaust has been said by many an anti-Semite. I just never thought that I'd read it in The Guardian. The fact that Philip Roth would fictionalize a rabbi who might have been some kind of collaborator with a fictitious Lindbergh presidency, okay, that's, I didn't know Philip Roth. He was one of America's greatest writers. But in the final analysis, we could say what it is. It's fiction. But this guy says it's real. And I want to ask all of you, whether you love President Trump, whether you loathe President Trump, whether you think President Trump is doing the greatest job protecting us from the coronavirus, and I think his administration is really making every effort. Even if it took a little bit of time to get into fifth gear, they're making every effort. And I'm grateful to them, as I am to Governor Cuomo. I'm not here to find fault with people right now. I'm here to be grateful to people. But whether you love Trump, loathe Trump, don't compare him to Hitler, please. You loathe Trump, work to get him out of office. You'll elect Joe Biden. What does that have to do with taking an American president and comparing him to someone who started a war that killed 100 million people, or that killed all the world's Roma virtually, and killed 1/3 of the world's Jews, 1.5 million children? How dare you make that comparison? It's an affront to decency. It trivializes the 6 million. It's wrong. It's horrible. It's wrong. And we don't, and your political opposition doesn't have to go that far, but that's not even what I want to talk about, because once I'm accused of being part of this, God almighty. From there, there's a rabbi who just got on this feed, who just wrote something, who actually, I believe, compared Trump to Hitler. And I wrote a response to him, and that's a disgrace. I want to be clear. It's a disgrace. Again, let me be clear. America's a democracy. You can love Trump, you can loathe Trump, you can write wonderful things about him, you can write terrible things about him, how horrible he is. You could think that he's saving America from the coronavirus. You could say that he's responsible for the spread of the pandemic. Those are all legitimate views. Some should be checked by facts, of course, but they're all legitimate views. But to compare him to the man responsible for the Holocaust, it's a desecration of the 6 million. And I want to tell this rabbi who's watching that clearly you have not, I'm guessing, been to the places where I took my kids over 3 years to write my book, Holocaust Holiday, One Family's Descent into Genocide Memory Hell. Because if you had been in Majdanek and seen the giant, and maybe you were, but then why weren't you touched by it? If you had been to Majdanek and see the giant mound of human ash, almost all Jewish ash, if you have been to Auschwitz-Birkenau and you see the one remaining crematory that wasn't destroyed where there were still bones in Auschwitz I, if you've been to Tikchin in Poland near Białystok and seen an entire shtetl that was wiped out of Jews in one night where they marched them all into the forest and murdered them. If you've seen all that, the fact that you could compare the President of the United States to Hitler means that you have no sensitivity in and feeling towards the 6 million Jews whose lungs were filled with poison gas or were shot in ravines by the Einsatzgruppen and the SS like they were at Babi Yar in the Ukraine outside of Kiev. So let me be clear about that. You can hate whoever you want. I want to tell that rabbi, I don't even say his name because anyone who makes that kind of comparison is such an extremist. I'm not someone who believes in fanatics. You can dislike Trump, you can oppose Trump. If you fanatically hate him with every fiber of your being to the extent that you will tread upon the memory of 6 million Jews by comparing the president to Hitler, I'm sorry, that you've reached a level of fanatical hatred and there's no rational dialogue left anymore. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't work to oust him from office. That's your legitimate right as Americans. Whether you think Biden should be president, look, a lot of people now think that Andrew Cuomo should be president. Fine. And Cuomo's done a great job, and I think the president's doing an excellent job. And I want to praise politicians on both sides of the aisle because the coronavirus is a time for unity. We're all experiencing this global emergency together as a human family. Every ethnicity, I hate the word race, there is no race, there's only one human race. But every ethnicity, every nationality, every political persuasion, every religion, everyone who's absent of religion will all experience this pandemic together and we all have to fight it together. So those who want to come along and divide us, those who want to, legitimate political criticism still exists in America, even in the time of a global pandemic. But those who want to demonize Trump or demonize Andrew Cuomo or demonize, I'm not into that. Then go watch someone else because you're not going to have me do that. So the fact that there's a rabbi who's actually watching this, who accused Trump of being like Hitler, that's a level of fanatical hatred. Let me tell you, I opposed President Obama's deal with Iran. And I opposed it because Iran was threatening almost every day to annihilate my people. They threatened a second Holocaust. They said that Israel was a cancer, Israel was a tumor, Israel was a scab that had to be removed. And they were building nuclear bombs and they had a nuclear program that could easily be used for what one of their generals called, I believe, a one-bomb state, Israel. You can have a second Holocaust, and you don't need the boxcars, and you don't need the typhus, and you don't need the gas chambers, and you don't need the crematoria. Just one nuclear bomb. So I opposed President Obama's plan, which was negotiated with John Kerry. But I never once demonized the president, God forbid. I never once questioned the president's motives. I believe President Obama enacted that deal in what he thought was the best interest of the United States and stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, but he was just wrong. He was wrong because it legitimized their nuclear program. It allowed for the continuity of their nuclear program with sunset clauses after like 10 years. And finally, it never opposed their genocidal rhetoric against the Jewish people. I never attacked President Obama, who I think is an extremely decent man. I'm watching President Obama's Twitter feed through this coronavirus, and he's always inspiring, always mature. He's a visionary leader, but as president, he failed us with the Iran deal. It was a catastrophic failure. I have every right to believe that, and I think the facts are absolutely on my side. And I thank President Trump for taking us out of that deal because it was a deal that legitimized and even inadvertently, it almost dignified genocidal rhetoric because it rewarded the Iranians with $150 billion where they threatened to annihilate the Jewish people. So for all the rabbis that want to say Trump is Hitler and all that, you want to be a fanatical, utter left-wing, radical extremist and spew hatred of that with the kind that tramples on the innocent memory of the 6 million Jews, you may do so, but I'm not going to be a part of it. And I won't respond in kind either. But I will say to the Guardian that you have a responsibility to publish professional journalism. You have a responsibility to uphold journalistic standards. You have a legal responsibility not to engage in willful libel, which involves punitive damages. Let me say something else, slightly off the subject, but back to rabbis and their responsibilities and pastors and priests and their responsibilities. I'm kind of in shock that a pastor in Florida decided that he was going to open his church against all the health guidelines this past Sunday, and he was arrested. Now, hey, maybe he's like a celebrity. We hadn't heard of him before. Maybe, and I'm saying this to all my Christian brothers and sisters who I love so much, and I thank you for all the love and support all of you have given me throughout my life, but especially over the past few weeks as I've broadcast to you almost nightly. And so many of my Christian brothers and sisters have been writing and following, and I salute your faith and I thank you. But my Christian brothers and sisters should be at the forefront of condemning the actions of this pastor who decided to open his church against the law, it appears. I know the laws are a little bit murky here. In America, we do have freedoms and our rights, of course, but it seems to have been against the law. It was certainly against all medical advice. And we also have seen in the Jewish community, in the Muslim community, in the Christian community, or in the more hedonistic community among young people who are flocking the beaches of Miami or Texas during spring break. We've seen the outbreaks of the pandemic when people decided to flout medical advisories and not care whether or not that they would contract this because they're young, or I'm young and I can't be hurt by the virus, so I don't care if I'm going to go to the beach, or I'm a person of faith and I believe that God's going to take care of me, so I don't care. No, I'm sorry. The Bible in Deuteronomy is clear. And the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do. You have to do. You have to do for God to bless you. You have to have a kli, a receptacle for his blessing. And when you decide to open church, even for prayer, when other people can get sick and people's parents can die, or they can die, God forbid, then you are showing contempt for human life, when the principal message of religion is that God is our creator and we are his children and he values our lives and our lives are of infinite value, and that every person is infinitely precious and they're irreplaceable. And if they die, God forbid, there is no replacement, there's no substitute who could take their place. So you have to value their life. So this pastor who got arrested, maybe he thinks he's like a great civil rights activist because he's standing up for people's rights. I couldn't disagree more. You're betraying faith. You're betraying religion. Keep your parishioners alive. My God, that is your first responsibility, to keep your parishioners alive. And then I saw in the Times of Israel that there was some bizarre story. I don't remember all the facts. I think a Jewish lawyer in the tri-state area sued Governor Cuomo for not letting him go to shul, to synagogue. He's not a rabbi. He's a lawyer. And not having clients now. And he sued. He's saying, you're denying me my rights. Are you serious? You're going to drag the Jewish religion into your lawsuit when all the rabbis have said that we have to listen to the medical professionals? Verapo Yerape, and the words and we should certainly bring healing are in the actual Bible, and we're supposed to listen to our doctors. We're allowed to violate the Sabbath. We're commanded to violate the Sabbath to keep people alive. We're commanded to eat on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, to keep people alive. And you're suing Governor Cuomo, who's got 2 billion things on his mind, keeping New Yorkers alive. You're suing him. That's a disgrace, my brother. Pull back the lawsuit and apologize. Apologize. But if you want to betray your values and sue the New York governor who's trying to keep people alive for doing his job, then at the very least, call it your own religion, invent your own religion, but don't call it Judaism, because there's no Judaism in it and there's nothing Jewish about it. We Jews we know enough about suffering and disease and pandemics. Just think of the untold numbers of victims of the Holocaust who died not through the crematoria and not through the gas chambers and not through the machine gun nests and not through the Einsatzgruppen, but through disease, through typhus and all the things that come with starvation and all the people who died in the Warsaw Ghetto in the non-hygienic conditions. And it's too painful to even contemplate, especially at a time when the whole world is suffering with the coronavirus. And by the way, I hate even saying the word coronavirus. It sickens me. I read this excellent article that's worth reading in the New Yorker. I read it late last night. I think I tweeted it out. So good, because it explained the whole thing about the coronavirus. Did it come from a bat in China? These also have to be scientific, not emotional responses. And the writers said that they take the bats in these wet markets in Wuhan and they put them in cages, and maybe it was, I can't remember what the animal was, some marsupial, I think. And it can be transmitted from the bat to this other animal that people are eating. But the point is, these disgusting wet markets, and I think I read today that they haven't even been closed. I think I've read today that they haven't even been closed. So, and then explained that the corona, you all know by now, it's called corona because it has these little crowns. They're not crowns, they're spikes. They're disgusting. They're like points sticking out of the virus, and they're proteins, and those proteins are what infiltrate our cells. And I'm no great chemist or scientist. I'm not the greatest expert in biology, so please excuse my errors if I'm explaining this wrong, but you can read the article directly. I even hate saying the word coronavirus. I've come to loathe it so much, and I think we have every right to hate it. I loved when Governor Cuomo said we should kick its ass. So I thank President Trump for what he's doing to keep the American people safe. I thank Vice President Pence. I thank Dr. Fauci for his expertise. I thank Governor Cuomo for his inspired leadership, and I'm not going to attack anyone. I'm just going to wish them blessing and ask that God bestow his blessing upon our first responders, our nurses, our doctors, our families, our children, our parents, on Arabs, on Jews, on atheists, on agnostics, on Americans, on the British, on Nigerians, on Australians, on Singaporeans, on Californians, on New Zealanders, and on Filipinos, on absolutely everyone. God should bless all of his children. We are all equally his children. We are all of infinite value, and God has to protect us. May God protect you and your family. God bless you.